And I suppose if we get to that, if you need to ask Lori or David or Ryan questions, they'd be glad to answer as well. And so at this point, Chad, you have the floor, and I'll watch the clock, and we'll go from there.
It's probably better for me to watch the clock. Wonderful. I'm glad to be here with you today. I can assure you that there's more fun going on in the corner. So if you want to play cars, David is an expert car player. You can go and play with him. And Ryan's answer is either going to be ball, mama, or dad ass. Or Bubba. She's got that down. So if you ask your questions, just make sure it's a multiple choice question. Those are your answers to choose from. I'm glad to be here with you today. I'll try to answer as much about my life as I can. And then I'll let you have the chance to ask any questions you want. All started when I was born. No, really, it did. When I was born, my parents go to a Baptist church, Howell Baptist Church. My dad's been on staff there as long as I can remember. First, he was a youth minister. Then he went to become the family minister. So he's associate pastor of family life. He's been there for, 36 years or so. So he's been there for a long time, which means at this point, he basically does whatever you do when you've been in a church for 36 years. I don't know, he really has a job description. He just does it. So I've grown up in the church my whole life. About the time I got to be about 6 years old, I started asking more questions about what it meant to know Jesus, what it meant to follow after Jesus. And so one day, my dad decided it was a good chance for us to have some one-on-one time when my older brother went to go play baseball for his baseball practice. So we drove in his blue Oldsmobile to the Presbyterian church. So I like to say that I'm multi-denominational. We went to the Presbyterian church so my brother could play baseball. And sitting outside the Presbyterian church, my dad and I talked about what it meant to be a believer, what it meant to know that I'm a sinner, that Christ died for me, and that I needed him so that I could have life with Christ forever. I said, in my 6-year-old brain, this seems like a pretty good deal to me. I'm in. So right there in his car, we prayed, and I accepted Christ. And then we went to play catch outside. It was a wonderful day for me. I was like, accept Christ, get to go play catch with my dad. Doesn't get much better than this. Fast forward through my life, about 8th grade, I decided that I really need to know what I was going to do when I grew up. I mean, because when you're an 8th grader, you really have to have that question answered, right? So I started praying. I said, God, I want to know, what do you want me to do when I grow up? Every night, multiple times a night, like a broken record. God, what do you want me to do when I grow up? What do you want me to do when I grow up? So I began to dream, began to think. I like math a lot, so I was like, well, accountants get to do math. Maybe that's something I want to do. I like to argue with my brothers. I said, well, lawyers get to argue. Maybe that'd be a good thing to do. And so I was bouncing between all these ideas in my head. And kind of on the back burner was this ministry thing. I didn't really want to go into the ministry world necessarily because my dad was a minister. My older brother had already felt the call to missions. And so I was like, well, this is kind of the family thing. I don't want to just jump into this. I want to kind of go do my own thing. But every night, God, what do you want me to do when I grow up? Fast forward to my sophomore year of high school. After my sophomore year of high school, we did a mission trip in Houston where I grew up. And then at the end of that mission trip, we had the Baptist World Youth Conference in Houston. So we went to that conference. And during those conferences, you have different breakout sessions that you get the choice of going to. So I'd gone to one really good breakout session. And then I was looking through the list. I was like, I don't really see anything else that I really want to go to on this list of breakout sessions. But one caught my eye. It said, if you're thinking about going into the ministry, this is a good breakout session for you. So I went. I was like, yeah, let's see what this has to say. And it was the absolute worst thing I've ever experienced. They sat there and they tried to guilt trip us all, everybody in the room, into going into foreign missions. I was like, I'm thinking about going into ministry, but I don't want to be guilted into this. I want to think that this is God calling me into this. But God used that experience, just that desire to even think about going into ministries, that was even a consideration for me, to start to work in my heart. And then we finished up that conference, and we're back home at our church, telling the church about the week, about the mission trip we did in Houston, the park ministry stuff we did, and then also the Baptist World Youth Conference. And at the end of that service, right as the invitation hymn was starting, God decided to answer my prayer. He said, ministry, I want you to be in full-time ministry in the church. Wherever I call you, wherever I lead you, that's what I want you to do for the rest of your life. I was like, really? Right now, during the invitation hymn, is this really how you tried to tell me what you're going to do? I was like, okay. And he said, well, you might as well go forward now. I was like, I just found out about this. You want me to go forward now and tell the church? He said, right now, don't wait. Go ahead and go forward and let everybody know this is what I've called you to do. So that was one of those moments in life where I crystal clear heard from God. There's those times where you know that he's giving you a word. It's like an audible voice in your head. Not all the time, but there are those times, and that was definitely one of those times. Continue on. I went to Howard Payne University, just down the road here. Student Jets. Good deal. I'm glad we have family in the room. And so right after my freshman year at Howard Payne, I went to Morocco in North Africa for a summer. We did some mission work there. My older brother was on that team as well. And it was in Morocco that I knew that God was calling me to the local church. I love missions, and I still do. My older brother is a missionary overseas. He's in Central Asia. He and his wife and their daughter live overseas. And I've done a number of things overseas. I'll tell you about some of those in a little bit. But it was on that trip that I began to look around me. First, I began to see my own life. We were there doing a cultural exchange program. We were learning Arabic, we were learning Moroccan history, and we were teaching English and teaching American culture to college students in Morocco. And it was a wonderful experience just to do those things. But I realized that the whole time I'm there, my real focus, my real goal, was to tell other people about Jesus, to build friendships with them, and to begin to share who Christ is. One of those friends is Shafek, and we still talk every once in a while. I know some things going on in his life. He knows some things going on in my life. It's been longer periods of time over the years, but we still keep up that relationship. But the thing I learned is that I was doing the same thing I was doing in school. I was taking classes. I had a job that I was supposed to do. But my focus was on telling other people about Jesus Christ. And it got me thinking, why don't I do that at home all the time? It's the same thing. I'm just as busy here as I am at home. Why can't this still be my main focus? Why can't sharing Christ with other people around me still be my main focus? And so that began to see that life, all of life, is spent on mission. And then I began to look around. Morocco is a Muslim country, I think 98%. And as I looked around, though, you had different types of Muslims. You had some that were pretty dedicated. They went to the mosque, they said their prayers, but most of them just did it when somebody was looking, or just did it when we were looking. If we walked down the street and there was a call to prayer, and they didn't know we were around, they would still just keep going on with their business. But if we were there, if they were hanging out with us, they made sure that they had their prayer mat, and they put it out so they could say their prayers. I got to thinking, is that any different from what we do sometimes? I would look around the people I grew up with in the youth group. Some of them were dedicated to Christ, but some of them just did it when people were looking. And so God laid on my heart a passion for the church, that we are people who live for Christ all the time, even when other people aren't looking. We make sure that we live our lives for the sake of Jesus Christ. And so God really gave me a passion for the church here in America at that point. So I finished up Howard Payne, came over to Truett Seminary at Baylor University, did my master's degree there, worked at Shiloh Baptist Church in Crawford down the road while I was at Truett, so I'm somewhat familiar with the area. Then I graduated from Truett, moved back down to Houston, got a job at a church as a co-pastor and then a pastor. There was a pastor who was about to retire, so we shared the pulpit for a little bit, and then he retired and I took over that church in Houston. And then through, long story, I'll give you the short version here. Through some course of events, we ended up merging two churches together. And there are two churches that came from the same mother church. The other church came off as a church split. Our church came off as a church plant. And by bringing the two together, we really saw there was kind of a mending of that relationship over time as we brought those two churches together. And at that point, I took on the role of pastor of teaching and missions at Sienna Ranch Baptist Church. And so I preach some of the time, about a third of the time, and then I oversee all of our mission work currently. We go to to West Africa about 4 times a year. And so I oversee that work, as well as some work we do locally, some prison ministry things we do, as well as some things we do in the community. So that's the main part of my role currently. And at the same time, I come back to Truett to get my doctoral degree from Truett. Finished up last December, graduated, did my dissertation. I'm sure y'all are really interested. It's a pretty thick book. I'll be glad to let you read it sometime. But I did it in cultural translation, the idea that we need to get to know the other person that we're talking with, understand how they communicate, what means do they communicate with, what stories matter to them, what illustrations work for them, what culture they come from. And as we understand who they are, then we have the ability to share Christ in a way that they have the best way of understanding. And so I spent 3 years working on that on the side while working at church as well. All along, I'm really wanting to be married. At that point in time, I was single when we did the church merger when I started school. But I've been praying, God, much like my prayer in 8th grade. Actually, I probably started this prayer in 8th grade. I was like, why someday? Please, God, please, anytime now. And so after the merger of the 2 churches came to be, we finished up a building project on a new church building. I was overseeing that building project. And the first Sunday, we had our grand opening, and there's a girl standing in the back window of our church. And I'd recognized her. I met her once before. My neighbor reintroduced us to each other, and I met Lori. And I had met Lori one time. She'd come to our church with her first husband, Dave, a couple of years ahead of them. But since that point in time, her husband passed away. She was 28 years old. He was 30, right? Beautiful. He was 30. He died suddenly of a cardiac arrhythmia out of the blue, no warning ahead of time. Lori was 6 months pregnant with our son David at the time. And I'd heard about that. Lori lived in the same neighborhood I did, and so I knew she was just down the road about a quarter mile away. And so news spreads in our neighborhood pretty quickly. So I had known about that, but I hadn't really seen Lori since then, until she showed up at church. And so we got to talking in the back of the church that day and just catching up about what's been going on in our lives. And then we start seeing each other in the neighborhood all the time. I mean, it's been about 2 years. We don't see each other at all. And now we're seeing each other 2 or 3 times a week. I'll be going down to our neighbor's house. She'll be walking around the block with David. Or I'd go running around the block, and sure enough, it'd be the time when she's going on her walk. She didn't walk the same time every day, so I wasn't planning this. It just happened to be that I was taking out the trash one evening, and there she goes, walking by that mile loop around our neighborhood. So we would stop and talk, and then I would start to join them as they walked around the neighborhood. And we just started to get to know each other as we walked around the neighborhood. About a month into this, I've been praying, God, I don't want to jump into this kind of relationship without knowing that this is what you have planned. I wanted to respect Lori and definitely wanted to respect David in that relationship. And so I've been praying and praying and praying. And one night, I prayed for a long time before I went to bed. And then the next morning when I woke up, Jeremiah 29:11 was ringing through my head. It said, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, not to harm you, but to give you hope and a future. And as I heard that scripture running through my head, it was once again one of those crystal clear times where God said, this is my plan for you. I want you and Lori to be together. And so I was like, well, we haven't even been on a date. So I said, figured it's about time to ask her out. So I asked her to go get frozen yogurt, only she didn't realize it was a date, apparently. I thought it was a date. She didn't think it was a date. It's a good thing. She said if she thought it was a date, she probably wouldn't have gone. So it worked out well for me. I'm not sure that's good dating advice, really. But nonetheless, we went and got frozen yogurt, then we went to a park, played a game called bocce ball, which is a mixture of horseshoes and miniature golf. If you've never played bocce ball, it's a fun game. And then after that, we just walked around the park and we talked. And about the first lap around the park, I was like, I think it's pretty obvious by now that I like you. and it turns out it wasn't obvious. Apparently wasn't communicating very well. Hopefully I'm communicating better now. But then I began to tell her how I felt. I was like, I didn't want to jump into this lightly. And so I've been praying to see if this is what God has in store. I want you to know that my plan, if you want to start dating, is that I'm in this for the long haul. I'm not in this for short term to see how it goes kind of thing. And we just kept talking, and as we did, it turns out that everything I was saying was a complete answer to the prayers that she had been praying. And just before she came to church that Sunday, that first Sunday we met each other again, she had that feeling that God was saying, okay, it's about time. It's about time you start looking to be remarried again. And as she went through that process, just before that Sunday, she decided to finally take off her wedding ring and not wear it anymore. And that was kind of her last, I don't really want to do this, but this is what you're calling me to do, God, so I'm willing to see where you lead. She's like, but he's going to have to do all the work. She's like, I'm not going to pursue anybody. I'm not going to do anything. He's got to do everything. And he's got to be a godly man. And he's got to make sure that David can know his grandparents. I want to make sure that Dave's family is still in the picture. And as we had that conversation around the park, those were all the things that I shared. I said, I want Dave's parents to be in our life. I want them to be the grandparents, not just of David, but of any other children we might have one day. And that's how it's been today. Actually, Dave's mom's coming in town next week. We'll spend some time together. And she's another grandmom. Ryan and David have 3 sets of grandparents. They're lucky kids. And if we come here, hopefully they'll get a couple other sets of grandparents along the way, too. But it's just been a wonderful experience. So fast forward, we start dating. Christmas that year, we go to my parents' house for the first time, the house I grew up in, and taking a tour around the house. And that's what happens in our house, at least. When you come to the house, you get to see everything. And so we're going around the house, and Lori and I are standing in the room I grew up in. And she's kind of looking around, and she said, how long has that been on the wall? I looked at it, said, as long as I can remember. Why? So I started to look at what she was pointing at a little more, and it had my name, Chad, and then underneath it, what my name means, Defender, and then a scripture reference that whoever made this decided goes with my name, and it's Isaiah 1:17. And that scripture says, do good, seek justice, defend the fatherless, and care, or plead for the widow. And I was like, that has a lot more meaning now than it did growing up. But that's been in my room my whole life. I've read that scripture over and over again. And it's like God was saying, I've prepared you all along, whether you know it or not, for this to be your future. And so Lori and I got married on May 26th, and that's 2012. Yes, that's correct. 2012. And then shortly after that, Lori got pregnant with Ryan, and she was born on March the 8th, 2013. And so now we have 2 beautiful kids, David and Ryan, and I guess that's about the end of the story. I think it is, unless I missed something. So that's my life in a nutshell. I guess it's time for questions.
Okay, this is the time. If you've got something that you missed out of that story, or something that's not even related to that, let's just raise a hand and ask one question at a time. And you know, if you think it's a fair question, his answer is a fair response. So now's the time. Well, I thought Linda was going to be the first one in the. While you're thinking of the question you're going to ask, let me just give you a little bit of a how we got directed to Chad. Gary and I got a tip. Our committee actually got a tip about a pastor who lived away from here, and so one Sunday we just dropped in at this church. And it was pretty obvious we weren't the regulars there. And this pastor, was standing outside. This was, I don't know what time of the year it was, but anyway, the temperature was such that he could stand outside the church. And so as we went by there, we spoke to him casually, and then we followed up. Gary did a day or two later and asked if he would submit a resume to us. And he responded shortly after that he believed that he was in the correct place, but he says, I have someone, and then a while later he contacted Gary and he said, I've got someone I would like to. If it would be all right with you, I'll ask if he would like to send a resume. So, we had gotten resumes from, advertising in a number of places, and, our committee's feeling that this came to us in, such an unusual way, the interest was there. But it is, it's kind of strange how, things lead you there, that someone that, that wasn't looking for something that we just made a contact with ends up referring a friend. And so Chad did follow through with the resume, and we went through the process. And y'all know that several weeks ago we drove to Missouri City. As soon as we were waiting for a new van to get here so we could smell a new van on a 4-hour trip. And so that's how we've gotten here today. Is we've gone through interview processes, whatever that might, however you come up with that, the process that we followed got us to this point. And we'd asked Chad and Lori to come and just visit and look around. Some of you have, did get the opportunity maybe to cross paths with them, because when they were here was the Sunday that Vacation Bible School started. So we just kind of mixed David in with the rest of the kids, and we took Lori and David and toured around the church, and then the following day, they looked around town, and so again, we kind of this has evolved to this point here. So you might go ahead.
Well, you might not. You don't know the rest of that story. How I found out about y'all is equally amazing, because my friend, who's the pastor y'all went to go see, we went through seminary together, so we were pretty good friends. We'd stayed in touch after seminary quite a bit. But we had another guy that we went to seminary with who had just come back off the mission field. And so my friend told that other guy that, hey, I know of a church that's open. He's like, well, I've already got a job coming off the mission field. I'm covered. So he too wasn't looking, and he was having coffee with my uncle, and he said, hey, do you know anybody who's looking for a new job as a pastor? My uncle's a associate pastor at First Arlington up in the Dallas area, and so they were having coffee together. He said, well, I think my nephew is, and so my uncle told this guy, well, my nephew Chad is. He said, oh, I know Chad, we went to seminary together. So he called me, he said, hey, one of our friends knows about a church that has an opening, and wanted to see if I was interested. I said, well, who knows? He's like, oh, Matt knows. I was like, oh, I know Matt. I'm really good. I was actually better friends with Matt than this guy. It's like, I'll just call Matt. And so I called Matt, and sure enough, that's how I found out about y'all's church being open. So it's amazing how that loop works its way around. So there we go.
Okay, we stalled for time. Okay, Marge.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, missions is definitely close to my heart. I don't want to list off everywhere, but I've been quite a few places around the world myself doing some mission work, some for short periods of time, some for longer periods of time. My older brother is currently a missionary, and so he lives in Central Asia. I can't really tell you where, but before that, he lived in northern Iraq as well, and so he's done some pretty hardcore missions, if you want to. I mean, he's had to watch his own safety quite a bit, so I won't really tell you where he is. But nonetheless, so definitely there's a personal connection to mission work. But as far as how the church is involved, I think the first thing is that each and every one of us should live our lives on mission. We should view the place where we are living currently as our mission field. It's the place where God has put us to do His work in this world. No matter what our job is, no matter what other things we do during the day, our primary task here should be on mission in this world. God wants us to be disciples, and He wants us to make disciples. And then I think He wants us to truly be involved beyond just the place we live. He wants us to go beyond the city limits. We have those directives go to Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and to the uttermost parts of the world. And I believe that God really wants us in some way to be involved in all those areas of mission. And I think we can do that in a couple different ways. First, we can go. Now, not all of us can go all those places. I realize that not everybody can go to the uttermost parts of the world. We go where we can go. We can all go next door. We can probably all go to the next city over. But we go where we can go to share Christ. And so we can go, we can pray. We can pray for the work that God's doing in this world. We can pray for those who are on mission around us. We can pray for those who are living in the far reaches of this world on the mission field each and every day in those foreign areas. We can go, we can pray, we can give. Missions takes money. There's no two ways around that. It takes resources to be on mission, especially when we're supporting missionaries overseas. I know that full well. I have a number of friends on the mission field as well as my older brother, and it takes resources to keep them there. It also takes resources for trips and for other things, even community service type things that we do. So we can go, we can pray, we can give, and then I think a very important thing is to stay connected. And by that what I mean is I don't think it's a one-time thing. I don't think it's well, we go and do this thing once,